Welcome to episode 2 of Family on 3 podcast. I'm excited to be joined today by Craig Jones, high school counselor at the Wellington School, baseball coach, forever baseball junkie, and just one of the most authentic people that I know. We'll be discussing how to engage one another during these challenging times, as well as the power of hope and optimism as we look forward to the brighter future that lies ahead. Without further ado, let's get started with Craig Jones.
Family on 3. 1, 2, 3. Family.
As we sit here in this conversation, we're obviously in the middle of a situation that none of us could have anticipated or prepared for. And a lot of us are in roles of leadership in varying capacities, be it as a parent, a coach, a teacher, a professor living here in a college town. And we're trying to lead from a place of uncertainty, which is not what we're accustomed to doing. And it's not comfortable. But using that as the backdrop, with your time in counseling and starting, I say, with the adults, how would you talk to those folks about engaging with our younger generation during this time of uncertainty and isolation, and effectively engaging with them?
Yeah. Whew. So I think, before engaging with them engaging with them in conversation is, I guess, to first, with the adults, we've been trying to do is to two things. One, ask the question of the adults: how are you doing with this? How are you feeling? Kind of your thoughts. What are your questions? And even that last one, what are your questions? Knowing that I don't even necessarily have all the answers. What are your fears? And kind of doing that with the faculty. So in my school, that's one of the things that I've been asking them. How, kind of starting with how are you doing? And also seeing them for who they are, meaning the multiple roles that they have, right? Our most familiar relationship that I have with faculty is our colleagues. But also, taking a moment to pause and think they're also parents, they're sons and daughters, they're brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, and so on. And so this pandemic has, hitting people in different ways, because in terms of like away from school, they may have different identities. So checking in first with them in that fashion. Not just how is your teacher self, but how is your parent self, how is your daughter self, and so on. And then in addition to that, and then after that, I should say, it's like, okay, now kind of what we just went through, what we just did is sort of what we need to do with our students. They are students, but they are sons and daughters. They are brothers and sisters, siblings and nephews. And so this may be hitting them, it's like, we can't just come from like an academic kind of focus. That's the most common and familiar thing, but it's really kind of stepping back and going, okay, now how are you, your overall you, all of you, all your different identifiers. I'm asking about all of that, not just, are you worried about schoolwork, and let's just the topic of conversation. It might be, checking in with a student and, we anticipate it about how am I going to get schoolwork done? How am I going to keep my grades up? How am I going to graduate? But really what they want to talk about is, my 6-year-old brother is driving me crazy right now.
100%. Well, it's funny that you say that, and it just, not to divert from the question, but the simple question of asking someone, how are you doing?
Yeah.
I think I just had this conversation yesterday morning with my 8-year-old daughter, who you can just, as a parent, you can tell, as a coach, you can tell, as a teacher, you can tell when something's weighing on a young person's mind. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me as a parent to have that simple conversation about not only how are you doing, but also it's okay if your answer isn't I'm doing great, because, we're all we're all lying if we say, oh yeah, this is fine. It's no big deal. Like I'm handling it great. Like, no, you're not. I'm not. As I told her, I was like, I'm not. I have fears and anxieties and all of those things. And, I think sometimes as the adult, we feel like we can't express that. And sometimes we forget the impact of such a simple question of how are you doing? And then giving them the permission to tell you the truth, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. To tell, giving the permission to tell the truth, it's giving them permission to be vulnerable in telling the truth, meaning I'm going to say a thing and I'm not sure how it's going to hit. Oftentimes for young people, especially with their parents or someone who they really, really value, it's a relationship they really value, it's the judgment, right? Yeah. If I say a thing and what is this person, what is this individual, coach, teacher, parent going to think? What are they going to, how are they going to feel about it? Are they going to see me differently? And that last one, are they going to see me differently? And, in all honesty, they might, but that could be for the better.
Absolutely.
We assumed for the worst, right? Oh, now I'm this troubled individual. Right. No, like, wow, actually, I've only seen you as, straight A student, standout athlete, have it all together. Wow, you have, you're actually sensitive. You're held it back and kind of, hear that, acknowledge that, and work from that place as opposed to some, maybe if anything, as the adult, check some assumptions I may have about a young person, right? And yes, who I think they are, but let them actually kind of sit back and wait and let them, this is who I am at this moment. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think it's a perfect segue into this idea of, I've come in and talked with your class about, we called it mental toughness, but I have since kind of transformed it into mental resiliency, which I really think is, as a coach, is an incredibly important skill set for an athlete to develop. But as we've gone through this, I think resiliency is just a skill set for every human being on earth to develop. Because that idea of, like you said, is, to me, being mentally tough or mentally resilient isn't, I can deal with a coach yelling at me and it doesn't bother me. It's, I can tell that coach how I'm feeling. I can tell my parent, or I can tell my teacher or professor how I'm feeling. I have the strength of character to know and trust that that's going to yield something positive. To your point, yes, they might see me differently, but if they don't see me differently in a good way, then that's a whole different conversation. So as we look at this, and as you obviously work with, as you mentioned, with the faculty at Wellington, but also with students, I do wonder if this is a perfect example of how valuable a skill set something like resiliency is. And I'd love your thoughts on how students can approach that, and can really look at opportunities to develop that skill during something like this.
Yes. Yes, I think they can, but we also have to be mindful of, again, where they are, how they are processing this. And I think this has, I was in a conversation just last night with some other, educators, some diversity practitioners at independent schools. And what was brought up was, shared with us, was talking about the stages of grief that can occur, right, when a traumatic experience or a loss. And this, for young people and even for adults, this has created a situation where we've all been kind of been affected by a loss of our normal. And, so the other, different stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So ideally, where can be helpful is, we can come out of this and there's some movement towards acceptance, right? our normal as we know it is gone. And we understand that, and it's sad, it's unfortunate, it's upsetting, but it is. And we were all kind of being able, in terms of response to this, in that acceptance stage. No big deal.
Right.
We got this. Bring it on, coronavirus. Come on, just got COVID-19. No worries. I'm not scared.
Yep.
But unfortunately, we got folks who are gonna, it's gonna be denial. It's gonna be bargaining, right? Well, fine, we can't go to school, like thinking about our athletes. Can't go to school, but can we get together and still practice? Well, no.
Oh yeah.
That's that bargaining. That's bargaining response kind of way to the grief of like, I don't get to go up and go to practice every day. I don't get to get up and go to school every day and sit in class and then hang out in the common areas with my peers.
Right.
So yes, this is a way to work on that skill set. However, we have to, I guess, provide some guidance and perspective in that, first acknowledge that they may be in one of these stages other than acceptance. Right?
Yes. Yep.
It's going to take them longer than others to kind of move, right? If I'm in that anger kind of stage, it's going to be hard for me to accept this.
Sure.
Right? And even denial, like this is not real, or this, I just can't really believe that this is happening. That I may not get some school tradition or ceremony that I've looked forward to for the last 3 years. I won't get to have. It's hard to maybe move from that denial phase and get them there. So we as adults, I think, have some of our work is kind of helping move them there.
I love that. I love that outlook on it, from the idea of, and it goes back to what you said earlier about meeting people where they are, and not assuming that where they are. And it's something that through my work with the Denison lacrosse team, it was, I felt like I could have looked at the roster of 48 and all 48 were at different stages at all different times. And it's been a fascinating process over the last handful of weeks, communicating with them and just literally feeling the changes in those conversations as people have moved through those varying steps. And not all of them are at the acceptance step, as you mentioned. I don't even know that I'm at the acceptance step, and, I dabble in the angry, I dabble in the denial, and I think we all do that. But I think that your point about for young people, I think part of, and again, this is just one guy's opinion, I think part of the process of developing resiliency is understanding the process. And that it isn't, oh, I woke up this morning and now I'm mentally resilient. Because
right.
You're going to spend your whole life trying to build that skill set. And understanding, I love that conversation about these are the steps along the way. And from a coach's perspective, and from an athlete's perspective, that's something that resonates, because the most cliche saying now, because of Nick Saban at Alabama, is trust the process. Well, that's what we're really talking about here. And you had mentioned in that about students being taken away from their normal, and at a place like Wellington, where I'm an alum, you've been for 15 years. We can both speak very much about the power of community there. And it's a place that obviously I hold dearly, and my most important friendships and relationships were built there and are still there. And a place like Wellington is so grounded in those personal relationships between faculty and staff, faculty and faculty, that those relationships have just been fundamentally changed in a very dramatic way. And how do you, as a faculty member and counselor, process that the severing of those face-to-face in the commons, in the hallway, the high five at the locker, the great job in your tennis match, good luck in your play tonight. How do you process that being gone personally? Because everything you do there is based around helping develop that. And then what are some ways that the Wellington community has processed that and really kind of engaged their student and faculty about helping them with that?
Yeah. So, personally, I mean, so I think how I personally work through it, and some of this comes from my partner, from my wife. She kind of offered this perspective of, a situation is seeing a situation kind of is just that. It's a situation. It's a circumstance. It doesn't have kind of this judgment to it, good, bad, right? Judgmental kind of aspect to it. We bring that to the situation, right? How we feel about it, right? So, I use the example, I think about sports too, as coaches too, like, an error or a mistake is something that it happens. Is it good or bad? Like, well, how we feel about it, how we process it. And so I think that, I've been with our faculty kind of like, hey, again, working from the information we have about this virus, the situation, what's going on, what do we know? What can we operate from? Okay. And then again, giving time to how we feel about, how's everyone feeling about it? What do you say okay with or good with, but like, what do you kind of have that acceptance about from it? And then what do you still have like some not so great feelings about? Acknowledging and affirming those, and then saying, okay, now given the situation and circumstance, what can we do to create the best sort of experience, connections that we possibly can, given what we have. So we cannot be having that physical proximity with one another, but we can, to where we maybe are doing nonverbal types of communication to express our appreciation, rapport, connection with one another.
Sure.
And now then do we, it's, hey, student messages to students, we miss you, we love you, we can't wait to see you again, providing hope. Can't wait to see you again.
Yeah,
Looking
absolutely.
forward to that, providing hope and optimism. But then also, I think, virtually. So, for example, in our upper school, they still are having advisory once a week. So it's not just virtual learning, but it's a virtual connecting. There's things that we've done in our day where we have advisory once a week for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And so this past Wednesday at advisory time, students were encouraged to log in and meet with their advisory group, their advisor and advisory group. And just again, and some of it was again, first week checking in, where are you, how are you doing? Sure. But also what's been a highlight, what's been a low light. Again, and even asking hope questions. What's the first thing you're going to do when shelter in place is over? Who's the first person you're gonna reach out to and meet? Who's the first hug? Who's going to get the first hug? That's a non-family member.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love the use of that word hope, and how easy it is to steer a conversation down that path. Just literally by, like you said, by even the tone of, or the simple adjustment of words in the question that forces someone to think about a positive.
Yes.
One of the things we talked about with our guys at Denison when the season got canceled was, we were 4 games in with the number 5 team in the country. I mean, we've got all the pieces for a Final Four run. It's all these things, and then it's gone. Yeah. And we were in as a group for literally the last team meeting. And, it dawned on me while I was sitting there, I was like, I asked the guys, I was like, if somebody gave you the option of having this 2020 story with this team, or no 2020 story at all, which one would you pick? And to a man, they're all like, well, I'd pick this because at least we got this part of the experience.
Mhm.
And I told him, I said, hold on to that, because there's plenty of people that don't even have that.
Right.
And, as I've talked to these guys over the last couple of weeks from their homes, you can just tell for the returning guys how badly they want to get back. And to me, it was one of those classic cliche moments of you don't know what you had till you lost it.
Right.
And I feel like societally, it could be a great opportunity when you talk about hope to remind people that when we talk about whenever the light at the end of the tunnel, whenever we get to it, is just how bright that light could be and how awesome we're going to think giving that hug or high five to a friend is going to feel. It didn't feel like that, on a random Tuesday, walking down the hallway, because we take it for granted. And now all of a sudden it's going to be, the hug's going to be a little bit tighter. The high five's going to be a little bit harder. And it's going to be one of those things where I just feel like I hope, and as I look at the next question, I'm optimistic that even for my own kids, they recognize, when you get back to school, when you get back to your friends in person, remember how much it sucked to not have them there. Yes. and value those moments more. And I hope that that's, what happens. And, it's, as I say, optimism. And we talked about Wellington, I saw on social media the mantra that Wellington has started using, the unflappable optimism, which I love. I love the word unflappable just because it's unique and it kind of makes me laugh for whatever reason. But I do love the sense of hope and encouragement that the phrase brings. And it's very fitting for a school like Wellington that's had that since its, founding. But for you, you've been a counselor for 20 plus years. You've done it at a place like Wellington. You've done it in the public school system in Baltimore. You've seen the spectrum. And when you hear that phrase, unflappable optimism, what thoughts or feelings for you come to mind based on everything that you've encountered, and taking COVID-19 out of it and just looking at a macro level? What are your thoughts for that phrase when you talk about helping young people, as I put, find their way?
I think, well, for me, unflappable, I would say that, wow. I think I've always, it's been seeing the positives and strengths of a situation. For me, that's what it's always been. So you're right. This is, this coronavirus, COVID-19, however you want to, pandemic, whatever word you want to use, is significant and it's impactful. But then I think back in my career, this is one of a number of just horrible situations I've been a part of. So I was in Baltimore during the DC sniper period. I was in Baltimore, DC area for 9/11. And so I think about unflappable. I think about, again, that resiliency, that ability to bounce back, and belief. And so there's eternal optimism that I have in situations and in people, especially our young people, that we're gonna be okay, that we will rebound from this, come back from this, and be, if not better, the same. And that sameness is for the most part, generally speaking, really good, especially at Wellington. We will be ones to kind of, again, be able to acknowledge this, that this happened, but also kind of find a way to move forward and succeed. from this. And so that's that unflappable way about our school and about our community. When others are struggling with that, that we kind of don't run in the other direction. I guess the way to put it, I think Wellington is a community where individuals are more likely to run towards the fire to help than to run away from it.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of individuals we have in our community. And it's just fantastic. And that's what makes us unflappable. That's what makes us like the what's next, what's to come, always kind of easy for me to kind of see and envision.
I love that. I love the what's next phrase. I think you talk about hope, talk about that forward thinking questions that are centered around something in the future. I think it's so easy to, in a situation like this, but again, this is, as you mentioned, this is the backdrop. I was actually working in DC during the sniper period, and it was crazy. And in its own way, it actually had a more similar feel to this than even post 9/11. Because for anyone listening that has no idea what we're talking about, living in the DC Baltimore area during the sniper situation was that idea of the unknown. Yes. It was just a fear, and it was a fear you couldn't see. It wasn't tangible. It was just out there. And I remember that the balance between, again, like you said, fear and optimism. But I think one of the things you said when talking about Wellington, and I think that, at Denison, I would say the community that I'm in there, both as a coach, but also just with all the administrative leadership there that has been fantastic, is that idea of acknowledging what this is, and then being excited to answer the question of what's next, and not being scared of answering the question of what's next. Yeah. And I think that for so many parents out there, myself included, the unknown is what makes you nervous. It's just unsettling. And I think that, again, following Wellington on social media, as I have, their ability to capture the human spirit, for lack of a better phrase, of their students, of their faculty, but of just kind of the core of the school is awesome. And I think that the institutions, the businesses, the people that can find that optimism are going to be the folks that are positioned when, the curtain drops and we move forward, to move forward faster and in not only a more productive, but in just a simply happier way. Yes. And, I think that, at a place like Wellington, folks like yourself, and others, if I start giving any other shout outs, then I'm going to catch grief for not giving everybody shout outs. But, I've been associated with the community long enough to know who all those folks are, that, you can't have unflappable optimism without people at the core of the operation that already have it. And so I commend you for being one of those leaders for the institution in that, because at a place that is, 3-year-olds through 18-year-olds, it's hard. And, the gamut you run with being able to understand and process stuff like this is crazy. We can't imagine it. I was telling someone it'd be like having a 3-year-old and an 18-year-old in your house, and you're trying to parent them. It's totally different. Yes. And so I commend you in the Wellington community, and I love it. I miss it, but I think that it's a place where it's positioned itself psychologically and culturally to come back stronger, from this. So I just want to make sure I commend you on that. But the last question that I ask everybody on this, because I am a huge believer and living life with the mantra of just be a good teammate. Because I think it applies literally to everything we do. and it transcends sports. You know, I say that to someone and they're like, well, you're a coach, so that's why you're saying it. But, you know, when I talk to my daughters about what it means to be a part of our family and that our family is the ultimate team, and to how it relates to their classmates at school or our lacrosse players at Denison, and not only on our roster, but in the campus community and the Granville community, you know, when you hear that phrase, you know, how would you finish the sentence? To be a good teammate is to be
a good teammate is to be committed to something larger than just yourself.
Love it. I love it. That's exactly it. It's, I mean, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's, I laugh. It's the last question because it's the one that gets me the most pumped. And it's the one that I think is, again, what you just said is so spot on. And while I don't know that there's a wrong answer to the question, there are more right answers than others. But I think that that's so important right now, especially. And, you know, I keep relating stories back to my family, but, you know, I was talking to my oldest about, you know, the idea that, you know, this is bigger than us. And like, yes, we want to go to the park and, you know, play on the swing set, but we're not allowed to. We want to go over to our neighbor's house and hang out with them, but we're not allowed to. And it's frustrating. And that idea of right now being a good teammate is giving up what you want to do in order to do what you need to do. And it's hard. And one of the reasons why I even wanted to start this podcast idea was if two people listened to it and turned around and had that conversation with their kid, I was going to be happy. Because, you know, I only have so many players that I coach and so many kids in my house, but it's that idea of like, you know, you got to fight your impulse to do what you want to do. Like we all want normal, but what we need to do is, you know, is for the greater good. And right now our team is a societal team, and it sounds so cliche, but I was telling a friend of mine, I was like, I'm on Team Ohio right now. And, you know, my parents live in Florida, and to not get into any political discussion, but watching how Florida was handled with parents that are in their late 60s, I wish they lived in Ohio. Yeah. And, you know, they're in the group that you don't want to get sick. And it's, you know, I look down there and I'm like, you're not being good teammates. That's just what it comes down to. And I was talking last night on a call with some other coaches with a coach that's in the Philadelphia area. And he was like, we have no chance. He's like, nobody here is in it for the greater good. And it was demoralizing to hear. And at the same time, it made me appreciate what we've done as a community. And people can be upset about it all they want, but I feel like for the most part, we've done exactly what you said. We've been a good teammate by buying into being a part of something bigger than ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So no, it's great. And, you know, Craig, like I said, I can't thank you enough for coming on and taking the time. But also, you know, for being a leader at a community, obviously that I care a lot about. But, you know, young people are challenged with this. Families are challenged. You know, like I said, parents, we all have more fears than we ever admit. And like I said, I think hearing you talk about the simplicity of just asking, how are you doing? And being okay with giving an honest answer, is a huge thing. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on all of that. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Most welcome. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on and I always enjoy talking with you, and hopefully some of what I share and what some of our conversation will impact, you know, in a good way, someone else to either to do something to get us to, like I said, if not the normal we once had, a new and improved normal.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate the time.
Well, thank you, and stay safe, stay sane, and keep doing the good work. Well, brighter days definitely lie ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.